It's Reefer Madness, the podcast, with Trevor and Kirk.
Kirk, we're back.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going?
Good. Really good. Nice day, a little smoky, but that seems to be our summer.
We haven't had rain in a while.
We haven't had rain in a while. True.
Couple things here. This relationship that I have with Mickey, we started it in January. I think I was sitting at my computer, doing some research, and I got on social media and I saw her social media on Instagram, High Society Hemp Co. And I said, "Hey, you'd be a really good interview. We should arrange something." She said, "Yeah, let's do it." And then what happened, and you'll learn in the interview, and I don't want to give it away right away, but you'll learn in the interview that once again, we have found somebody that went on a cannabis journey, personal journey with cannabis, and ended up with a business at the end. And
Yeah.
that, right?
No,
And
I think that's a good tease. A good tease on the way in. Not giving too much away.
Yeah, I don't want to give a lot away because this is another one of those conversations where I had to just stop and listen because what a compelling story she has. And again, I think you can hear that the conversation builds, and then I backtrack about 5 paces, and then it builds down another branch, and then it builds, and I have to stop and go back. So there's a lot of going back and forth, but I really enjoyed the conversation. And again, I wish that I had more time with her. It's sort of like in 2 days, I interviewed two women who are passionate, Jana Champagne, which was a previous episode, and Mickey, and she only goes by Mickey. That's even on her webpage, it's just Mickey. I just enjoyed this conversation. What'd you think going into it?
It was really, really good. I'm going to make an odd connection, but that's the way my brain goes. So you've heard of PB&J as in the sandwich? So I was listening to Bill Nye the Science Guy, who is now head of the Planetary Society, and he's got another what the acronym for PB&J, and that is passion, joy, and beauty. And I think it's got a lot of that in her story. A lot of PB&J, passion, joy, and beauty in the story. And I hope you enjoyed as much as I did.
Yeah, do you want to just jump right into the interview and then we come out of it?
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Mickey, and I am the owner of High Society Hemp Co. in Lake Worth, Texas.
We've been getting a lot of Texas stories lately, and it hasn't been on purpose. It just seems like I've just been finding a lot of stories in Texas. We met on social media, and I was very intrigued with your business. You have High Society Hemp, CBD infused cooking products.
Yes.
That's sort of where this story was going to begin for me. But as I know, you've also had a journey. So I guess Mickey, please just let's talk about your story. Share your story with our audience and
Yeah,
why you started this business.
of course. Well, my husband was diagnosed with terminal cancer 6 months after we were engaged. We went to the state's compassionate care list for help for his symptoms from chemotherapy and things like that to help him get through. And it ended up costing us around $700 to $800 a month, which with a family of five, that's just not feasible, especially when we've lost one income due to cancer. So I started looking around and trying to see if I could find solutions to the problem. And we turned to out of state. So we were going out of state and, bringing things back home for him to use that way. But me being a mom and a wife, I didn't want to, get into legal trouble that way. So I started brainstorming of how can I solve this problem myself? How can I solve this problem right here at home? And I turned to the legal CBD business. And since my husband wasn't able to smoke or anything like that because he had cancer in his lungs, I turned to edibles. I feel like that's an underrated market. And if you can eat, and then I feel like you are able to get the nutrients in. And as long as your, nutrition is as long as your nutrition is kept up, you're more healthy. You're able to fight cancer. So as long as you could eat, and then if it were edibles on top of, you could eat even more. So that was kind of the the direction that I lean, just to help him be able to get through cancer a little bit easier.
What was it? What was it about the Western medicine and cancer care that wasn't working for you two?
He was on a lot of opioid painkillers. And like I said, he had terminal cancer. He had a 15% chance to survive 5 years. He just passed away this last May, unfortunately, but he did survive that 5 years. The Western medicine that he was being given was high doses of methadone, fentanyl, things like that, things that were taking his time away from his family because he was just out of it from those types of medicines. And he was just more miserable than he was comfortable.
Okay. So you found that CBD, you did your own research about cannabis, and Texas is a legal medical state.
Well, Texas is not a legal medical state per se. We do have the compassionate care list, but it is not legal as far as medical wise for anybody who can get a medical card or anything like that. And it's definitely not legal or recreationally. So
Okay, it's not recreational either?
no, it's not. No.
Okay. So how do you go about starting a CBD business in a state that is not legal?
Lots and lots of research. Lots of research and red tape, unfortunately. But there is a process that you can go through the state and get your license, and there's a lot of background checks and things involved in that. And then, putting your product out there has to be third-party lab tested. There's a lot of red tape to go through, but if your due diligence is done, you can get it done.
So you and again, timeline. So your husband lived for 5 years, 6 months before the marriage, in your engagement. So you got engaged, and then 6 months later he was diagnosed.
Yes.
And then you've got married, and
Yes.
you were married for 5 years. Good on you. That was lovely. And then you started your business how long ago?
I started my business in 2023. He was diagnosed in 2020. So we did go through quite a few of months of miserable for him. He went through 8 different types of chemotherapy trying to fight this for his family, but in the end, cancer won, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry for that. So is your business still on the go? I see I'm on the webpage right now. I still have you're still producing?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like I owe it to my community to make sure that people like my husband who either want or need access to things like that have access to things like that. I do offer the states only infused CBD baking mix so that you can make edibles at home. Essentially, everything's already done for you. Everything's already infused. All you'll need to do is add your eggs, your milk, your butter, and then put it in the oven and you're done. So you'll have edibles on hand.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, I'm looking. So CBD cooking, you have CBD oils, CBD spices, seasonings, you have cake mixes, drink mixes, and edibles. So you must, I mean, you're obviously sitting in your kitchen. In Canada, we would have to have a commercial kitchen.
Sure.
So you have to, do you own a kitchen? Did you rent a kitchen?
Unfortunately, I'm not there yet. I'm hoping to get there with the business, but in Texas, there is a law called the cottage law where I can make up to a certain amount of money selling baked goods from my home kitchen before I need to get a commercial kitchen. Unfortunately, I'm not there yet, but hopefully I'm on my way.
Well, good on you. And so your business must be Texas centric.
Yes, absolutely. Texas is my home, has been my home for 40 years. And like I said, I think I owe it to my community who's been lacking this type of medication or treatment or whatever you'd like to call it in this area for so very long.
Okay, and your customers therefore are also Texas customers. You cannot ship out of state.
I can ship out of state. Thankfully, my products are legal in 46 states, so I can ship wherever need as long as it's within the 46 states. But yes, I do primarily do my business within Texas, but I'm hoping to branch out pretty soon.
Okay, and international. I mean, we're in Canada here, so
Yeah, that'd be great.
One of our listeners who want to make a birthday cake using CBDs could get a product sent to Canada.
Absolutely.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Let's talk a little bit more about your husband, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
So let's talk about cannabis as medicine for him. How did that work?
Like I said, it was giving him more life. It was giving him the chance to not have to take those medications that were making him tired or making him woozy or making him not be able to drive or, spend time with his family consciously. He was either, asleep or just kind of not there on like a high state, but more of like more zombie-like than anything. So thankfully, CBD and a mixture of THC helped him get through those days, albeit with a happier attitude because that's, the benefit from the plant. But he was able to participate in life more than anything. And I think that's what was really important to him, is to actually have the time that he had left with his family.
I again, this could go on for hours. We'd talk about how this is, but I admire the diligence of you doing this for your family and for your fiance, which is your husband, and you have children. You have
I
children
do.
as well.
We have 3, yes.
Okay, and so they obviously enjoyed their father's participation in life.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about Western medicine. So here you are, I'm sure in Texas, following the rules, and as a nurse, hospitals can be foreign places and ugly places and not always accommodating places. Though I must admit, my experience with cancer care in most states and most provinces, cancer care practitioners are very caring people.
Absolutely.
How did your therapeutics you were doing at home work with the Western style medicine? So, I mean, the doctors had their therapies and you're doing your therapies. How did they jive?
They actually went hand in hand, really. I feel like the medication that I was giving him, as far as cannabis and things of that nature, were helping him offset the side effects from the Western medicine. Because, like I said, he was on 8 different types of chemotherapy, so nauseous was an understatement, and that really did help him not have those side effects that he was going to have from the Western medicine. And thankfully, it was there and available to him. Because if it wasn't available to him, he would have had to stick with Western medicine, and God knows where he would have been or how he would have felt. Because I
And
know if he wasn't able to eat, if he wasn't able to keep up his nutrition, he wasn't able to fight cancer, essentially. If your body's not healthy, you're not able to do anything.
is cannabis part of the Texas cancer routine?
It
Um,
is, as of 2020, I believe they added it to the compassionate care list, which is far too late, in my opinion.
well, at least it's happening, obviously. But
Yes,
okay, so can I dig a little deeper into that? How did your interaction then? Did the doctors and the nurses help you through it? Pharmacists, were pharmacists involved with his care? Did he use less of the pharmaceuticals when he started the CBDs?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He did use less of the medication they were giving him, as far as using CBD and THC to offset those types of things. Um, his doctors were aware that he was using THC and CBD as therapy for the side effects of chemotherapy, but they weren't gung ho on recommending it. They're like, well, we need to know that you're using it, but we don't, recommend it from a medical standpoint. But I feel like the doctors are obligated to say they don't recommend it, but I feel like some of them were leaning towards, hey, that's a pretty good idea, but they couldn't legally tell me that as far as like a medical doctor.
Okay, but clarify for me. Just earlier, you said that
Sure.
in 2020, it became part of the Texas therapeutics. So
Mhm.
so here we are 3 years later. Uh, Explain what that means. That it's part of the therapeutics, but the doctors don't recommend it. That's confusing me.
Right. His oncologist didn't recommend it, as far as saying, hey, go ahead and go do this. So she couldn't tell us to go use these products, but she needed to know that we were using them. As far as the Texas compassionate care list, it was a completely different doctor that we had to see. It wasn't even a doctor that was involved in his cancer care. It was a completely different third party doctor that we had to go see and pay an extra fee for every month to get a prescription for him to have any sort of THC or CBD.
Okay, so that's important information. So you were working with a cannabis physician, cannabis-centric physician.
Correct. Yes, sir.
So here's the question. Was that physician talking to your oncologist? Were they sharing
No.
information?
No, they were
Curious.
not in team with each other. They were not communicating. It was just me having to, relate to the doctor that this is what we were doing.
Curious. So as you started with the cannabis therapy, were you noticing him using less of the pharmaceuticals?
Absolutely. He didn't like to take medication as it was. And when he was in the thick of it, he was taking up to 32 pills a day. And that's a lot, especially when you don't like to take medication.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he was braver than he should have been. He took it with a grain of salt and tried as hard as he could to lean more towards CBD and THC, so he didn't have to rely on those other medications. And I did notice him pulling back on like the pain medication and things like that. The particular cancer that he had was very painful. It was in his chest wall. So every time he took a breath, it would hurt. So can you imagine, as many breaths as you take a day, everything hurts all the time. So once he did start CBD and THC, I could see that he was happier. He was more jovial. He liked to joke around with his friends and his family a lot more. I felt like in a mental state, he was in a better condition than he would have been on these other medications.
So who were the prescribers of the pharmaceuticals? The oncologists?
Yes.
So as you're working with the cannabis doctor, and was it a doctor or herbalist? What's the
title was doctor, so we were led to believe it was a doctor. Everything was done over the phone, so it wasn't actually in an in-person meeting or an in-person appointment with a doctor. Everything was over the phone.
Interesting. And was he Texas doc, or was she?
Supposedly, yes.
Okay, so you don't even know the location. You just
nope, no address, nothing, just a website and a doctor's name.
Okay, so now I'm wondering, did you go to a parking lot to get a phone number, or how did you find the person?
No, well, they had, I believe at the time, 3 dispensaries that were able to fill the prescriptions, and you had to drive either to Dallas or another hour away to meet up with the people who were bringing the prescriptions to a location, which was usually like a well, there was one time it was a parking lot, but it's usually like an herbal store or something like that, where they would meet you in a general area and then fill your prescription there at a card table they had set up inside of the store. So it was very, very non-professional, in my opinion. It was very it was interesting, to say the least.
Well, hence I'm talking to you. I find this fascinating. So I want to get into your business, but I'm finding this therapeutic as a nurse.
Yeah.
I want to get into this. So here's your husband using the CBD and the THC. Was he doing it orally, drops? He had
gummies, and he had gummies and he had oils, but what he was being prescribed was around 5 to 10 milligrams a day.
Okay.
Which was not going to cut it, unfortunately. I mean, he was a recreational smoker as it was, so he was already used to that, and adding 5 to 10 milligrams of an edible a day wasn't going to cut what he needed. So that's, I guess, essentially what led me into this business, is that I could provide what he needed on a more therapeutic dose than what he was receiving.
Okay. Was he also a tobacco smoker or asbestos miner? With any understanding where the cancer came from, or lifestyle?
Yeah, unfortunately, his cancer came from his father. His dad was in the military, and he got cancer from his service time. And it's the cancer that my husband has, the germline cancer. So it came from his dad genetically, unfortunately. Okay. So that's how he ended up with it.
Okay. Sorry, I just thought, because
you're fine.
He was a consumer of cannabis.
Yeah,
I wanted the audience to understand. Okay. Yeah. So now going back to working with this online cannabis doctor. So what did the Western oncologists and the whole cancer program, because my understanding of cancer programs, you start belonging to a family, right? When you go into the cancer ward, it's sort of a family environment. Everyone knows everybody. So all of a sudden, your husband is now using cannabis, and they must see a change in him.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Are they documenting it? Are they?
They would write. They ask him how he was feeling that day. How many times have you vomited? How many times this, that, the other, and they started to notice the number was going down, and they would ask, are you changing the medicine? Are you giving to him at different times, or what's happening at home? Because I was very diligent about, I gave him the medication at this time, this one at this for that. Everything was documented on my side, because it felt like I had the most control that way over helping him. But they would start to notice, like, is he having less symptoms, side effects, things like that. And they would think like, oh, you're doing good, you're doing great. And as far as I know, that it helped him, and I feel like it did help him, as far as, going from being a 10 on the nausea level to being like maybe a 5 or a 6. But there's no telling how it would have been without it, because this is our first time with everything. So, I would like to say that I feel like it has genuinely helped him, and I have personally seen the side effects in him. But as far as a medical standpoint, I can't tell you how that really went, unfortunately. I can't hear you.
I'm trying to mute myself so I
Sure.
get a better sound. I'm just trying to put myself in that place as a practitioner. I do have a wee bit of experience working within cancer care programs
Sure.
as a manager opposed to a practitioner. But so I've got this client coming in, and so there must have been a notable difference in his analgesics that he was taking, a decrease in your expense of the pharmaceuticals he was taking, and they didn't sit down and talk about that. They didn't like ask you like, we noticed you didn't pick up your prescription last week. Nothing like that.
Right. Um, I feel like when you're involved in something like terminal cancer, or you have something so detrimental as terminal cancer, you just get pills pushed off on you anyway, whether you want them or not. So he was on hospice for quite some time as managing care, and they would just bring pills by, like an entire bottle of methadone. And I'm like, what? I don't need this. Please stop bringing these medications by. But at a point where he was already on certain medications like methadone, and he had to continue taking those because he was dependent by that point. So he had to keep taking certain medications to a point, but he stopped taking other medications on top of. So he was, say he was on methadone and Dilaudid at the same time. He would not take the Dilaudid, and he'd just stay on the methadone because that's what he was already on. So I think that helped carried him through.
Right. Okay. And did you work so in hospice? Was that in a facility or at home?
At home.
Okay. Again, I congratulate you on that. And that's the wrong word to say congratulate, but I appreciate that you kept your husband home. In our emails back and forth, I could get a feeling from you, and you obviously care for him very much.
Absolutely.
Did you work with other patients within the cancer department? Did you liaison with others that were using cannabis?
I didn't. It was more, we went through the entire cancer journey here at home in Texas during COVID. So
Oh,
unfortunately, I wasn't allowed in a lot of appointments. I wasn't allowed to go to chemotherapy with him or sit with him and those types of things. So it was more of he was kind of on his own for a little while. So I didn't really get to talk to a lot of the patients here in Texas. We did transfer to an out-of-state facility in 2023 when he was given 3 to 6 months to live. And then we went to a trial out of state, and that gave him another 2.5 years. So I wasn't able to talk to patients there just because of legal reasons and things like that. And a lot of the patients were underage in that facility. So I didn't want to overstep my bounds or anything like that. But anytime I talk to somebody out at the grocery store, or because I'm a very friendly person, I'll talk to anybody. I'll talk to the person standing in line in front of me, and, we'll get to know each other. So if they're going to tell me, I'm having this problem, and I'm going to suggest, have you tried cannabis? Have you tried CBD? Have you tried THC? My aunt even takes it for her knee replacement. I mean, I'll tell anybody who will listen the benefits of CBD and THC. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to share that with other cancer patients.
okay. So going back to the cannabis therapy, you're prescribed 10 milligrams a day.
Yeah.
Did you receive the cannabis as flower, or did you receive the cannabis as oils or tinctures? How did you receive the cannabis?
He had an oil and gummies. The gummies were 2.5 milligrams, if I remember correctly. And I believe that he got a bottle of oil that I think was 100 milligrams total. So it was about a milliliter for 100 milligrams. But it was costing around $90 to $120 per prescription. So the bottle of oil, $120. The gummies, $90. And it was, yeah, just a little expensive for 50 milligrams to 100 milligrams of THC.
And does that segue us now into your business?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about your business. How do you source your and in your webpage it talks exclusively CBD. So you are a CBD business.
Right. I use full spectrum CBD and the hemp flower to use hemp derived THC. So everything is the CBD flower.
And hemp derived, not
Yes.
so. Okay. So there's
Yes.
absolutely no THC in it. Okay,
Well, there
and
is
we've
THC. Yeah, there's THC in it. There is hemp derived THC though, making that's the legal THC here in Texas. We're not allowed to use the one for marijuana, so it is all hemp derived and delta 9 THC and full spectrum CBD.
Okay. We've interviewed, like I said, we've done a lot of Texas interviews, and we have an episode on a young Texas farmer, Texas A&M, who is growing hemp, and he's getting his PhD now in hemp. And if you go back on our back in our episodes, you'll find those. So you're sourcing hemp flower, and so that's legal for you to do that.
Yes. Yes.
And
With the
but you're
license.
no, but you're no longer on the compassion list anymore,
No,
correct?
no,
So,
absolutely.
but you're still allowed to source it?
Yes. And since I'm licensed through the state of Texas and the Department of Health and Human Services, I am able to source flower that way.
Okay. And so you're in your kitchen. It looks very tidy. So you bring in a pound of flour, and so tell me about tell me the process of how you make cake dough.
Well, actually, it's a little bit more simple than that. I am actually using a water soluble THC and full spectrum CBD. So it's an isolate. It is a nano powder. So it is going to be 70% more bioavailable to your body. So it is going to absorb 70% more than a traditional edible. So I'm not using traditional methods. So everything is already, like I said, it's already infused for you. It's a water soluble powder, so it's not going to stink up your home, unfortunately, like the traditional methods. And you're going to barely taste it in your food, which is a bonus because a lot of edibles can be a little sour or not the greatest tasting, but you can't really taste it with a water soluble powder.
So you're not processing the cannabis yourself. You're buying it already in a nano product.
Yes, I'm working with a Texas company for my products. Yeah.
And they must be intrigued by you. They must be working really close with you. I can't imagine there's too many of you out there.
I think there's only 8,000 in Texas that are as far as retail. So I'm not really sure how many manufacturers there are. I know my license is number 975, so there can't be too many.
Okay. All right. Let's slip back to your husband. You're noticing he's whacked out on pharmaceuticals, and I completely appreciate that. I've seen it. Um,
Mhm.
so you decided to go with cannabis. So did you decide all of a sudden just start cooking your own cookies with a little bit of CBD and THC? You must have done a lot of your own research.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was using traditional methods with flour that was not legal in my state, so I was outsourcing that illegally. Unfortunately, I hate to admit that, but like I was telling you earlier, I didn't want to get in trouble. I've got 3 kids and a husband to take care of who has cancer. So who's going to take care of everybody if I'm in jail? So then I started doing my research about how can I solve this problem in my home. I have a problem at my back door. How do I get it to go away? So that's when I did all my research about how can I put something into food that he's going to be able to tolerate. Because like I said earlier, some edibles are just not that great tasting. I mean, to be honest, they do their job, but they're not that easy to stomach. And if you're already nauseous, why would I give you something that's going to make you more nauseous? So I was trying to figure out how to make it taste less like an edible and more like food.
Okay, so you weren't able to source flour, and we're talking about the bud, the flower from the cannabis plant, not flour in your cake, right? Just
Right, correct.
yeah, well, just because there can be a confusion. So could you not source cannabis flower through his medical license that he had?
No, at the time was only oil or
Okay.
gummies. I'm not sure if it has changed since then because we were no longer on the list, but at the time it was only tinctures, oils, and gummies.
So you had to, and I'm picturing like we interviewed Ethan Zong from Survivor, and he was telling us that he's in New York City with cancer, and he's in a back alley buying his cannabis in a back alley. So you are basically in a back alley online buying online flour from another state, having it shipped to you. You got what, an ounce of flour in your kitchen, and you're saying, "What do I do with this?"
Right. Because being a teenager, I knew how to make edibles, even if they were not legal at the time.
Okay,
I
now
knew
you're
I knew
giving
what to do
yourself
with it,
away.
right? I knew
Now
what to
you-
do with it. So, like I said, I was in my kitchen, had this beautiful plant in front of me, and what do I do with this at this time? I don't want my house to smell god awful for traditional methods, and I want my husband to be able to eat this. I want him to be able to not taste what's in it so that he can eat more of it. for giving him the opportunity to eat more actual food. So I made, cookies, cakes, whatever I made. I don't even remember at the time. He had some and he's like, I can't stomach this. And I said, okay, I understand. You're nauseous already. It, isn't the greatest taste. So that's when I did my research about what can I do to make this better. And then I found a company online that had the nano powder. I was looking into products and I looked, hey, is there a baking mix? Is there something that doesn't taste as bad? Is there something that I can make already done for me? Is there a dough? Is there a bread mix? Is there anything? Is there seasoning? I found a seasoning online and I'm like, well, that got me thinking. A seasoning. Okay, what else can I put this into to make it edible? Microdose my eggs with a little bit of the hot sauce powder, those types of things. Sorry.
No, take your time.
Sorry, I forgot where I was.
You were experimenting with nanoparticles and trying to figure out how to build something from that.
Yes. Thankfully, the nanoparticles in the powder that I use is fairly simple. Like I said, it's water soluble, and as long as you don't take it above a certain temperature, which is 340 degrees, it's stable. So I was thinking, hey, I can cook a lot of things at 340 degrees. I can make an entire cake. It might take me a little bit longer as far as in the oven, a couple more minutes, but it's going to bake at 340 degrees, and I'm going to have a viable product that I can keep in my freezer, or I can keep on hand that I can just get out for him whenever he needs it. So I was thinking, okay, great. Let's make seasonings and spices. Let's make a sugar-free cinnamon sugar, so I don't have to put as much sugar into his food. So I was trying to experiment with things like how to make it healthier, how to make it easier and more accessible to him, and how to keep it on hand so whenever he needed it, it was there. And that's when I turned to baking cookies or baking cupcakes or things like that, because who doesn't like a sweet treat?
Okay, so now you've created yourself High Society Hemp Company.
Yes.
Let's talk about this business of yours. How's business?
It's okay. It's been slow, unfortunately, because the last 5 years of my life has been consumed with cancer.
Sure.
So the last 2 years of my business, which has been its entire lifetime, has been slow, but that is okay. I feel like as long as I'm still getting out there and showing up every day for my business and for the people who I know rely on my product or enjoy my product, that I'm doing what I need to do. I'll get out there. I'll become more popular. I mean, there's always a want or a need for this type of product. As long as I'm honest and curate my product and make sure everybody knows what's in it and how to use the product properly, I'm going to build my customer base that way, on honesty and a helping hand.
Well, and I'm thinking you've only had 2 months to heal. So I mean,
Not
good
even
on
yet,
you.
but yeah.
Well, yeah, and good on you because I think I'm going to have to talk to you in about 4 or 5 years again because I just sense something in you. You seem to have a drive, and
Absolutely.
this is all. Besides this, what do you do for a living? What is your background?
Absolutely. I have worked in healthcare for about 10 years. I have been a home health aide for about 9 of those. I'm a phlebotomist, so I've been in and out of hospitals. My entire childhood, unfortunately, was in and out of hospitals. So chaos is where I thrive. So hospitals is where you find the most chaos.
Sorry, but every healthcare professional listening right now
Yes.
is also laughing because
Yeah.
I see it. And you know what, Mickey, that just explains everything. And I'm going to again, healthcare aides, home care workers, you guys don't get enough attention and I come so this really explains and brings it to the fold and how you cared for your husband.
Absolutely.
It's so now here you are. I'm sure you're still picking up shifts because you got to pay for the electricity. But are you now going to spend more time with the businesses and where do you see your business and yourself? I mean, because you must be quite a knowledgeable cannabis person by now. So where do you see yourself in a year's time?
Absolutely. In a year's time, the hope is a brick and mortar bakery. I am striving to open the state's only, and I'm hoping the nation's only cannabis bakery that focuses only on baked goods. That
Wow.
is that is my goal.
And
And for my business,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but will
No,
Texas allow that to happen?
yeah. As far as I am knowledgeable on the law that I've read, yes. It is going to be treated just as a dispensary, but I will just primarily sell edibles. They will be fresh baked and they will be, packaged accordingly, labeled accordingly. So they will just be an everyday edible at another just dispensary. So it'll be a dispensary, but a little bit different.
Not a little bit different, huge. That's a very interesting business model. I mean, you should be able to find some backers on that because really, you're correct. I mean, a CBD cannabis-based bakery, give me a break. That's got to be a moneymaker.
Yes. I have heard that I won't say the I guess the chain. I don't want to get in trouble, but I've been compared to a cookie company that's quite popular, but better.
Well, I look at your webpage and it's straight out of the 50s. I love it. It's and
Yes.
like I said, we started talking, gosh, it must be 6, 7, 8 months ago,
Mhm.
when we started talking and interacting on Instagram there. But I love your webpage. I really
Thank
do.
you.
And
Yes.
I love the feel of that 50s Americana when,
Yeah.
America was great, I guess. But sorry.
We're working on it.
Yeah, you're working on it. But that's fantastic. How about yourself though? As a healthcare aide, we call healthcare aides up here with experience, having, worked with cannabis with your husband, do you see yourself being a cannabis consultant in the future? Do you see yourself being a cannabis coach in the future
Uh, yes and no. Like I said, I want to focus mainly
on the bakery?
on the bakery and the
Yeah.
business, but absolutely, like I was saying earlier, education is key. I feel like that's the component that's missing. So far removed from an illegal state is the education, because I get a lot of questions when I'm out at markets selling, like, what is this legal? Like, how is this legal? And um, like I said, it's a missing component. Nobody knows what they're doing, what they're talking about, what they're buying, and unfortunately, that's the part that gets most people is they buy a product out of a smoke shop and they have a bad experience, and so they're completely turned off from cannabis altogether. And they're like, "Well, I had this 1,000 milligram gummy from the grocery store," and it's like, for one, you shouldn't be eating that much to begin with, and if you ate the whole thing and nothing happened, you're buying a bad product. So I just want people to know that the products that I'm trying to offer are curated. They're going to be the same experience every time. They're the same thing every time. It's not going to be something that you just picked up off the shelf and you've had a bad time with.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I'm
for the
wondering.
jets flying over.
Oh, no worries. I can't hear it. I'm wondering about the cannabis doc. Have you stayed in touch with the cannabis doc that you were working with?
No, like I said, it was more just over the phone, a website and a name. It wasn't a
Okay.
personal interaction. It was just another customer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mickey, I'm so glad we had this chance. Is there anything I didn't ask you? Is there anything about your business, your husband? Is there anything that you want our listeners to understand?
Uh, I think we've talked about everything that I could think of, but what I want listeners to understand is that education is key. Research what you're eating or taking and consuming, and make sure you know what you're getting. Don't just go buy something off a shelf. Ask questions. Always know what you're putting into your body and know the benefits of the things that you're putting into your body.
Well, I admire what you're doing, and I love your backstory and our experience. Trevor and I have been doing this for 7 years, and our experience has been when we meet people like you, it all is a passion they have about cannabis because they've gone through the journey. And I can't help but think that you are so far ahead of the curve in Texas, that there are other people that you when you get time to network with and that will obviously support your business. I can't see it not happening because I imagine Texas has a small group of cannabis centric people that you could be networking with.
Yes, absolutely. That is the goal, to get myself out there and to introduce myself to the important people to open important doors for me.
Well,
I,
I
I'm
hope.
I'm coming. Yeah, I'm coming through. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna educate. I'm gonna provide to my community in the way that I think that is appropriate, and the way I think that they deserve.
Well, I hope that our message gets out through our podcast. I'm looking at about 4 to 6 weeks, probably the end of August when we'll publish this one.
Okay,
We have about 3 or 4 in the shelves right now, and of course it'll be on our webpage. Please send me any links that you want me to, like your webpage will obviously be linked
sure,
to our webpage, but if there's other educational links you want us to, our listeners should have, please send those to us. I'll
yeah,
make sure they're
absolutely,
linked. And I guess the only thing I ask of you is that when your episode comes up, please push it through your network,
absolutely,
and we'll, share each other's stories.
yeah,
Um,
of course,
Thank you for this.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on early. I came downstairs, like I said, to set up, and I went, oh, she's already online.
Dad said if you're on time, you're late. So
Well, I happen to be one of those people too. I am always 5 minutes early, and I am married to somebody that, if the meeting starts at 7, she leaves home at 7. So, so
that sounds like my husband.
yeah, yeah. Good on you, girl.
Thank you.
I look forward to hearing from you, and I definitely will be touching base with you in the future to hear about your successes.
Thank you, Kirk. And if you don't mind, if you would send me your address, I'd love to send you a baking mix.
Oh, yeah, I'll do it right now. Here,
Sounds good.
I'll send it to you right now in chat. 8. Um, I type with 2 fingers.
No worries. No worries.
Uh, okay, so you got it in chat, and of course, I used the carriage return thinking I was giving you one address, but yeah, I will definitely take the mix, and Trevor and I will celebrate somebody's birthday with it.
Sounds good. Let me know how you like it. I'll talk to you soon, Kirk.
Cool. You got the address?
I do. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mickey. Appreciate it.
Talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to do first sort of a throwback to one of our previous ones. So the stuff that Jenna sells has nano-emulsion particles, which make them water soluble. So like you can just sort of crack the eggs into the cake mix, bake it, and you've got an infused cake. We talked a lot about nano-emulsions with Dr. Brent Guppy back in E92, Gimli glider to nano-emulsions. Just if you wanted someone to talk a little bit more about the science of how that works, but that's on the business part of what she's doing. That sounds like a really convenient business. I like an easy baked cake as much as, if I can grab a box, add some eggs. In fact, I do sometimes make pancakes, quote unquote, from scratch. But, especially out at the lake, it's so much easier to buy a box of pancake mix, add some water, and have pancakes than I have to bring out, the flour and the baking soda and the eggs, and then that, easy is good. So an easy bake cookie or cake or bagel or whatever that has cannabis in it already sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, and her story, we'll have a link on our webpage, highsociety.hempco.com. Her story is compelling, and this is why I didn't want to get into it in the lead, is that her husband Nicholas, um, you know, actually lived longer than he was told he would. And he got involved with a study in Tennessee, and I think that prolonged his life a little bit more. But what I like about this story is how cannabis pretty much made her life with her husband and her husband's life with his family easier. And that's where this story for me as a nurse was really compelling. And as you can hear me, Trevor, going back and forth about, well, what was the Western medicine doing at this time? And what was Western medicine doing at this time? And how she had to go to a medical cannabis doctor online, deal with the Western oncologist during COVID, and
Yeah.
come up.
During COVID stuck at go, oh, right. They've also got to do this when she literally can't go into her husband's oncology appointments because, this is lockdown. So, patients had to do a lot. on their own without, the usual supporting family members there with them. And yeah, and Texas being I'm not sure, I still quite understand it, but not really medically legal, not rec legal, but there seems to be a loophole through this compassionate care list that if you got this online script from a doc you've never met, and then you were even asking her, I think you were maybe even trying to make a joke. Oh, so did you have to go pick this up at in a parking lot? Oh no, of course not. Other than that one time, when she actually basically had to pick it up in the parking lot.
Yeah, and how many times has this happened in our interviews? Like Ethan Zong, I picture him being in a New York alleyway picking up his medical cannabis. Yeah, you're right. It was unclear to me. I was trying to probe and get a little bit more about Texas, but again, the story wasn't about Texas. But she created a CBD business in Texas. It's not medically legal or recreational legal. But then, we've also interviewed, Texas A&M and, growers. So they're growing hemp in Texas. So I think that's what made it legal. Marijuana is not legal, but hemp is.
Right.
So, and to remind people, the definition of hemp versus marijuana is
It's 0.3% THC, I think.
correct. You took my punchline. Correct. Yeah, that's exactly it. So she gets these nanoparticles and off she went. But again, I want to rant and I'm trying not to, but how can I have very little experience with cancer programs, except that I had an opportunity to, about 3 years. I think about 3 years I was managing a cancer department, but by no means was I involved with day-to-day care of the patients. But I knew the nurses, I knew the doctors that were caring for the patients, and that's a caring community.
Yeah, so I also found it interesting that because it was hemp derived, and I'm not saying which is right or wrong, I was just surprised that she can sell her products all across the US and in Canada. And I know it sounded bad when she said, her doctors wanted to know what her husband was on, which makes sense, but couldn't recommend cannabis. But I think at least part of that's got to be sort of the awkward situation the doctors are in, being in a non-legal state. It's real tough for a doctor to ethically recommend something that's not legal to use in that state or is questionably legal. And the last, just because I'm not sure if I've heard this term before, I sort of forgot it, a germline cancer. So cancer you pass directly on to your kids, that's terrible. You've literally got nothing other than being born from this guy and a little bit of looking. So just, it's not common. It's in less than, it's 5-ish% of cancers out there are sort of directly heritable. Most of the cancer, have some genetic component, but then some lifestyle component. But yeah, getting a cancer just from being born, or the strong predilection for one, sucks even worse more than regular cancer.
Correct. Again, as I was saying, that I don't have a lot of experience caring for people, but I find it emotionally distressful as a nurse. I find it incredulous as a nurse that wouldn't you see, I mean, you must see this as a pharmacist, right? That something's happening with the medication, that the guy's using less analgesics, and wouldn't you want to know why? Wouldn't you want to know you're getting your pot from a guy online? Like that disconnect kills me.
It does. And in a perfect world, there wouldn't be one, but just to give the practitioners the benefit of the doubt, if someone came into the pharmacy and said, my ADHD is so much better now that I'm using crystal meth, I'm sure I would say something like, yes, I'm happy you told me that you're on this so I can, help monitor your care, but I really can't recommend that you use crystal meth for your ADHD. So, it's more complicated when it's
that's I gotta stop you. That's a bad example.
Well, it is, but it's on the but on the legal part, like when
crystal meth is not legal.
Not quite legal in Texas. But in Texas right now, neither is the cannabis. So it'd be very difficult for a doctor to go, well, even if you're using this, and even if it's helping you,
Okay. Okay, I'll give
can
you
can
that.
I
Okay.
can I recommend it?
Okay, I'll give you that. And actually, that's in my notes. So I'll give you that. That yes, the oncologist can't very well say, hey, I recommend you use cannabis. However, you would think that someplace in his notes that the professionals would be tracking this, that they are, because cannabis is not an unknown substance in North America. Cannabis is not unknown as having medical, crystal meth has very few medical benefits. But cannabis is not an unknown. So this is where my rant is that is that there should be some notes. I mean, Dr. Dinnick, we go back to Dr. Dinnick, and he pretty much said to us that he was pushed into it by his patients. So the man must have been studying it and observing it and seeing benefits to it. And of course, cannabis is legal, so it would have been easier for him to do that than the doctors in Texas. But you would still think, I've done this in my practice. I've sat down with my clients and said, well, what are you doing? And how are you doing this? And, alcohol affects you this way. Maybe taking Tylenol and giving your kid Tylenols too many times. Like I have conversations with people about their behaviors and then I document it. And some of the behaviors may not be legal, but I still track it. So this is where in the conversation I keep interrupting or going, let's go back to the medical side for a moment here. What were your oncologists doing at this point? So, and I was fascinated by her answers, and this is where my rants and my blogs come into play.
Absolutely. And I thought it was interesting, and I'm not trying to be an apologist, but she called it hospice care. Not that we don't call it hospice here, but in Canada we often call it palliative care. When she kind of felt like her husband was just sort of given a bucket of drugs, whether he needed it or not. That's not uncommon in palliative care. My my pharmacist complaint is usually they seem to want to do that on 3 p.m. on a Friday, and make me run around like a chicken with a head cut off and see if we can get some. Anyway, that's just a pharmacist complaint. But the palliative care coordinators, which around here are almost always nurses, especially if someone's being looked after at home, basically their worst case scenario is someone running out of something at 2 a.m. when they can't get a hold of anybody. So I think the whole giving people too much, of their opioids and their everything else is almost par for the course for palliative care or hospice care. Now, I'm sure they're being careful to try to avoid drug diversion, like the drugs being palliative care, hospice care, opioids going off into the black market. But, I don't think they meant any harm or disservice to Mickey's husband by giving him, extra opioids. But it was really interesting to hear that he felt and she felt that after using the cannabis for a while, the amount of opioids that he needed to use went down dramatically, and he felt sort of more cognitively capable to interact with his family.
Well, as I said to Jana, sometimes I just wonder why cannabis isn't first line, because this is not the first time we've heard this, that people who have moved to cannabis have decreased their use of the analgesics. The thing about it gets me is that when they were bringing their bucket of medication for them, they would have seen that, oh, you haven't been using these ones. So, and also, I didn't ask her this. I didn't get in the costs because again, I didn't. I thought sometimes people don't like talking about money, but I can't help but ask: is in the American Texas system, is she paying for all those meds? So then when they're
Yeah,
dropping the meds
one way or the other, like
one
either
way,
she's got insurance or, but yes, yeah,
somebody's
yes.
paying
Short
for
answer,
them.
yes.
Yeah, somebody's paying for them. So again, I get the way my brain works is that, gee whiz, rather than drop off this $250 bottle of analgesics, um, you know, I'll let you have what you got and I'll take it away. I do get what you're saying that you don't want to run out at 2 in the morning. I get that. And I do understand that some of the medications, the Dilaudid and the methadone, you can't just abruptly stop those. I get all that. But I just, again, another good cannabis story. And at the very end of the conversation, we learned that she's a healthcare aide, which again just sort of
Yeah.
sewed up her personality. Like I say, I met Nikki online on social media. We talked back and forth, but even through her words, I knew she was a sensitive soul. And again, I mean, it's just conversations. You can read people and stuff. And when I met her online here on the Zoom meeting, I sensed it. And as soon as she said she's a healthcare, oh, bingo, of course you are. You know, of course you are. There's no question that you're a healthcare aide because I can see it in your personality. And you know, the fact that she cared for her husband at home. Um, I hope I have that kind of strength to do that. You know, I admire people that do that.
Yeah, and I don't know, just not really to play devil's advocate, but because I spent a goodly chunk of time in long-term care, I think, don't get me wrong, I think a patient may or may not be more comfortable at home, but I think it's a little bit too much. And if you can keep your loved one at home, more power to you. You know, you're a retired nurse, you're a healthcare aide, you've got you know the financial wherewithal to do it. But I see people, especially in nursing homes, isn't exactly the same as palliative care, but I put them on the same spectrum. I also see people keep, you know, grandma or wife or husband at home too long because the problem, you know, the amount of care that the patient gets might not change between home and the hospice bed or the nursing home, but it's so hard on the family. Like if you drop off your wife, husband, grandma, whoever at the care home or the hospice, at least now you can go home and get a decent night's sleep. At least you can go, you know, continue on with your job. Like the 24-hour care of a sick or dying relative is so taxing that I hope people don't think that and again, someone who worked in long-term care for 20-ish years, they aren't terrible places. Hospice and long-term care, yes, there are terrible stories, but the stories that don't make the news are, we have grandma who actually does better in long-term care than she did on her own because she's now getting 3 meals a day and some social interaction. Like there are good things about, it's going to be different for every family, but my little rant here, don't put your family member in hospice or nursing homes too late, because then it's just way too hard on the caregiver. And if you get a good hospice and a good long-term care care there can be excellent.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I've had recent family experience with both of these things, and yeah, as a nurse, I've seen both. I've seen both scenarios, and having somebody in hospice care with 24-hour care, what other professionals allows you to be family opposed to caregiver, because sometimes when you're caregiver, it can affect you being family as well. So yeah, this is why when I was hearing Mickey's stories, like, wow, I just kept going, wow, wow, lady, I can't help but wonder now, her husband has passed like less than 2 months ago, that there just must be this whole deep sigh that went through her entire existence. I mean, yes, she's lost her companion, her life companion, but also that whole continuous 24-hour care. Like, that I guess, and I said this to her as I was ending the conversation. I want to talk to her in 3-4 years from now. I want to keep track of her. She's sending me a cake mix, so when we make that cake,
Yeah, I heard that.
I'll call you over. We'll see what it is. But I believe that if she puts that much energy that she did in caring for her spouse, she's going to be a hugely successful person. And again, like the last 2 episodes, Jana, the nurse who became the herbalist, who is now, world acclaimed cannabis practitioner,
Educator.
educator, and now Mickey, healthcare aid extraordinaire who came up with a CBD business in Texas of all places. Yes, we'll be following her career because I can't help but think that if she puts that kind of energy into her career, she's going to soar.
I 100% agree.
All right, man. I'm Kirk Nyquist. I'm the registered nurse, and we're found at reefermed.ca.
I'm Trevor Schufeld. I'm the pharmacist. Also look for us on all your favorite podcasting platforms under Reefer Madness, the podcast. Give us a 5-star review. Say something nice about us in the comments. That's the best way for people to find us. And don't forget about YouTube. Kirk now has our pretty faces on their YouTube, so have a look for us there as well. You can see what we look like. We look surprisingly like Brad Pitt and George Clooney. Who knew? And this was another good one.
Yeah, it's another good one. And please share us because Meta doesn't like cannabis related postings. If you like us, tell a friend. We can always use one more listener. And if you're in the healthcare industry, go to our webpage and search topics. There's all sorts of topics. And the more we interview people, the more we can relate back to past topics that we've talked about. So, yeah, Trevor, another good one. I'll see you on the uptake. Enjoy your cabin.
Have a good afternoon, everybody. We'll talk to you later.